He is the bread of life, the way, the truth, and the life.
If Jesus cares about your basic needs, you know that you could trust him with everything, right?
He is the true vine, the light of the world.
You may not be good enough, but Jesus is good enough.
The good shepherd and the door.
He transforms water into wine, and that's what he wants to do in your life. He wants to transform you to identify with you, be with you, and then change you.
He is the resurrection and the life. He is. I am.
Well, good morning, NorthPoint. Really good to see you this morning. And it's fun to look back a little bit on this Gospel of John study that we have been doing. We actually started this back in the month of January in the cold, frigid temperatures of Iowa. And today is message number 17. Always good to end on sevens as we end the series today. So if you've got a Bible, take it and turn to John chapter 6, if you would. While you're doing that, I want to tell you where we're going from here. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a short series called Generous, where we're going to look at what God has to say about money. Now, we planned to do this series over a year ago, and then COVID hit. This thing called COVID. Have you guys heard about that thing? Yeah, that happened. And so I've had like a whole extra year to work on this message, so it should be at least decent. And so we're finally going to do that series, just looking at what God has to say about finances, about giving. A number of you times I hear stories from you, and you're like, what does God even expect? What are we supposed to do about this? And so we're just going to open His Word, see what God has to say. And then I also want to provide you just a practical tool for thinking about that. I know for some people, like, what do you expect at NorthPoint if we're a part of this body? Like, what does that look like? What does it mean? And so we're going to see what God says, and we're going to see some practical things as well. And I hope that'll be helpful for you. We'll hear some stories as well about some people in our church and how they look at those things. And we'll see how God's using NorthPoint in a variety of ways in our community and in the world through your giving as well. So I think that'll be good. Then for most of the summer, we're going to be in the book of Psalms. And so you could start, if you're looking for something to read, looking for something to study, I need to connect with God, Psalms would be a great place for you to go as we jump into this throughout this summer. You know, the Psalms is this book of songs, of poetry, of music that just expresses like raw human emotion and what people are feeling. It's honesty, it's challenging, it's good, and it just sort of taps into who God is and what the world is like and just the human struggle. So if you're human, I think this series will also be good for you. We're gonna have a bookmark that'll tell you the particular Psalms that we're doing on the different Sundays so you can read along and be prepared for that. And so we'll start that in a couple of weeks. Today, I want to bring this series on John to a conclusion by considering a question that John has been posing to us all throughout this study and all throughout his book, which is this: what does it mean to believe in Jesus? You know, we've been talking about this a lot because that's what John leads us to. What does it mean to believe in Jesus? At the end of John's gospel, he tells us that this is the very reason that he wrote the book and told us about Jesus's life. In John chapter 20, at the end of it, we read this: Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which aren't actually recorded in this book. So John's like, I've given you signs, I've given you Jesus's interactions with people, but there's a lot of stuff that I haven't told you. You know, read Matthew, Mark, and Luke for some of those other things. And then there's lots of stuff that we just couldn't even put down in the Bible. In fact, he's got another verse where he says, if everything Jesus did was written in books, the world itself couldn't contain the books that would be written about him. So John's like, I've selectively chosen a few things for you, but the ones that I've chosen are written, get this, so that you might believe. I've given these things to you so that you can believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that he's the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Now that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know about you, right? Life? Do you want life from the creator of life? If you want real life from the one who has created life, read John's gospel and believe in Jesus. Believe in Jesus. So what does that mean? What does it mean to believe in Jesus and have this life that God offers to us? Well, Jesus has helped answer this for us by various interactions he has with people, and often by using imagery. by using word pictures, by using object lessons. This is the way that Jesus liked to teach people. And so let's talk about a few of those that we've seen over the past few weeks. After Jesus fed these 5,000 people from a Lunchable, he goes on to tell them that I am the bread of life, right? I'm gonna satisfy your physical needs and I satisfy your spiritual hunger. So to believe in Jesus means that we look to him for satisfaction in our lives. Now, after this instance, we read about Jesus being the living water. He told that to the woman at the well in his interaction. And later on during this big feast that the Jews would celebrate when the high priest is pouring out the pitcher, in the background, Jesus raises his voice and says, anyone who thirsts, come to me and drink. And from your innermost being will flow rivers of living water. Remember this? We talked about, are we life-giving people? Part of what it means to believe in Jesus is that we are life-giving. We don't want to be vampires. We don't want to suck the life out of people. Now, you all have days where you're gonna do that, right? There's seasons sometimes where that's gonna happen, that's gonna go down. But overall, to believe in Jesus means that we look to him to fill us up with life, and then we give that life to other people. And Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. I am the light of the world, which means he's the truth, which, light reveals things to us. It shows you the path, it shows you where to go. And so Jesus is our source of truth. To believe in him means that you look to Jesus as your go-to in everything. Making decisions, thinking about life, looking at marriage, looking at family, looking at infertility, looking at whatever it is that you're dealing with, you say, Jesus, what do you say about this? You go to him for everything. It's your primary source of authority. And then after Jesus heals this blind man, Jesus heals a man that was blind from birth. He's already kind of outside of his community on the outside, kind of an outsider. Then he believes in Jesus and he's more of an outsider. He's excluded from his religious establishment. The religious leaders say, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. Jesus pursues this one man. He comes to this one man and he says, do you believe in me? And the man says, yes, I believe in you. And he falls down at Jesus' feet and worships him. And so we see that belief in Jesus means that we worship Jesus as the greatest of all time. We worship Jesus as the greatest thing, the greatest relationship that we have, and all of our affection and devotion goes towards him. And then Jesus helps us out with this. He says, I'm the good shepherd and you're my sheep, which means that to believe in Jesus means that we follow him. We listen to his voice. We don't always understand. We have hard things we got to deal with. It doesn't mean you have no doubts, that you have no skepticism, that you don't have any questions, but that at the end of the day, you look to Jesus for that and you follow him. And then last week we saw this, that Jesus said, I'm the resurrection and the life. That our great hope in this life, through all of our losses, through everything that we face and that we encounter, when Jesus goes to the funeral of his friend Lazarus, he weeps as God, deep emotion within him, he weeps and he cries alongside of the people that he has created, and he offers the hope that he is the resurrection and the life. So to believe in Jesus means we look to him as our resurrection in our life. Now, you might be like, okay, that's a lot. Okay, if that's what belief means, I'm not sure, Jeremy, if I can remember all of that. So let me make a list, let me write it all down, and let me make sure I'm checking all of the boxes that I'm doing all of these things. And what I would say to you is, no. Don't do that. I'm not asking you to do that, and I don't think Jesus wants you to do that. Because Jesus isn't trying to provide a task list for you, a list of things that you have to do and you have to figure out, make sure you get all of these things together. He's trying to show you that belief is not something that you just know about or recite or you memorize or you regurgitate. That's why he shares stories. And that's why he gives visuals and he gives imagery to us. Because for Jesus, belief is a relationship with him. You know what belief is like? Belief is like following the shepherd. It's like listening to his voice. It's like understanding that he wants to give you the truth. He wants you to live in reality. It's understanding that he will satisfy your deepest needs and your deepest longings in a relationship with him. It's like people who suffer loss, needing someone to understand their grief and walk alongside of them. That's what belief looks like. And for people who will worship something, and you know that, right? You know that you'll worship something in your life, that something will garner your greatest attention and affection. It's not a matter of like, oh, I'm a worshiper and you're not a worshiper, or people are like, no, I don't really have faith, I don't really believe. Everybody believes in something, and everybody worships something. And what you worship, you really get to choose. And what you worship could be anything. Could be a person, could be a boyfriend, could be a girlfriend. It could be an ideal relationship. It could be a perfect life. It could be a virtual life online where you don't really have a real life, but you have a virtual life that's online before people. It could be your dream job. It could be stuff. It could be Pokemon, for goodness sake. Like it could be, some people do that, right? There's probably a church of Pokemon. We know there's a church of Spock. There's like a church of Star Wars out there. So that's what some people worship. You get to choose what it is. The only thing is you don't have a choice as to whether or not you're going to worship. You will worship something. And so Jesus comes to you and I. He looks at you and I, and he says, there's only one who can give you life. There's only one that is worthy of your utmost affection and your desires and your worship. The bread of life, the living water, the light of the world, the good shepherd, the resurrection and the life. Come to me, worship me, follow me. Now, maybe for some of you at times you've had this question in your mind, like, when Jesus calls people to come to him and worship him, when he heals the blind man and the blind man bows at his feet and worships him, and Jesus says that he wants everybody's worship and he's seeking worshipers, isn't that kind of arrogant? Is it kind of needy of Jesus? Is it kind of like he's kind of proud of that? Because like we're supposed to be humble, we're not supposed to be proud and arrogant, and it would be wrong for you and I to call people to worship us, right? And so we look at Jesus sometimes and the things that he says and does, and we're like, well, that just doesn't quite seem that it's right. And what I would tell you, it wouldn't be right if it wasn't true. But since it's true that he is the light of the world, that he is the resurrection and the life, that he is everything we need, it would be wrong for Jesus not to call us to worship him. Because when Jesus calls you to worship him as the greatest thing, he wants your good. He knows it is best for you and that you will never find life apart from worshiping him as the greatest thing. It brings him glory and it is for your good because he's the only one that can truly satisfy us. And he wants that relationship with you. He wants to relate to you in that way. So it's not a task list. It's not a duty. It's not just you better obey or God's gonna get you. No, the creator of the universe wants you, and he loves you, and he likes you, and he knows that in order for you to receive all of that, you must believe in him fully. So one more time, what does that mean? What does it mean to believe in Jesus? Well, like Jesus today, all I want to do is give you one visual, just one illustration to show you what genuine belief in Jesus looks like. What is genuine belief? What does it mean to be a true believer? And that's what we're going to talk about. What is genuine belief? We are really into things that are genuine. We like organic, locally sourced, local honey, local, genuine, real article. Knockoffs, not so good. When it comes to a number of products, like you can try them, it's okay, but not quite as good. Like for instance, have any of you ever had Aldi's cereal? Or Walmart's brand of cereals? Like they're all right, and some of you are like, well, that's what we can afford, so that's what we get. It's all good, that's great if that's it. But it's not Kellogg's Frosted Mini Wheats, let me tell you. Like, give me my Kellogg's Frosted Mini Wheats. It's a different deal. Anybody ever had Dr. Thunder Pop before? Mountain Lightning? Coca-Cola with the K? Like you're over at somebody's house and you're like, yeah, what do you want to drink? Like, do you have cola? Yeah, I've got cola. I got Coke. And they pour you a glass of Dr. Thunder. You're like, what is this? This is not the genuine article. Like you want the real deal. And when it comes to faith in Jesus, we want the real deal. We don't want fake. We want the genuine article. So what does that look like? 3 elements to genuine belief. 3 elements to a true relationship with Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And the first element is this, it is knowledge. Genuine belief, first of all, is based on knowledge. You have to have knowledge. You have to know things about Jesus, right? You have to understand who he is. You have to understand who God is. You need to understand who you are and how God sees that. I mean, largely, this is why John writes his gospel, so that people would know about Jesus, right? And understand who he is. And so this is the base level of belief. It doesn't mean everything is resolved in your mind. It doesn't mean you have all of the answers. It doesn't mean that you know everything that a Bible scholar would know. But you know basic truths about Jesus, about the Bible, about what we call the gospel, the good news about Jesus. Genuine faith at a foundational level is based on knowledge. This is why Jesus is called the light of the world. This is why John, when he opens his gospel in John 1 and verse 1, he says that Jesus is the Word. He is the Word who was with God and was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we see his glory. Why does John use this analogy of Jesus being the Word or call him that? Because Jesus communicates God to us. He reveals God to us. He shows us who God is. This foundational level of genuine belief is the reason why a lot of churches do confirmation classes for young people. Because they say our young people, they need to know basic Bible doctrine. They need to know the truths that are in the Bible. They need to be able to understand these things. And maybe a number of you, if you were raised in a tradition that did that, you went through confirmation classes to confirm that you know the basics of the faith. This is why we do kids ministry and student ministry at NorthPoint Church, right? Because we're not just doing childcare. We want our kids to understand who Jesus is, to have that knowledge and that understanding about him. And that's really important because you can't believe what you don't know. You have to know things in order to believe them, right? But get this, knowledge alone is not genuine faith. Knowledge by itself is not genuine faith. Think, for example, about the Pharisees of Jesus' day. The Pharisees are the religious leaders of Jesus' day. They had more Bible knowledge than anyone else. I mean, you could have probably put like all the people together, and all of the people together would not have the Bible knowledge that one Pharisee had. And yet Jesus criticized them continually for not truly knowing the scriptures because they rejected him. They didn't believe in him. He tells them, you search the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. They testify about me. So if you really knew them, you would believe and trust in me because I am the scriptures. I am the fulfillment of all of those promises, right? So knowledge alone can be troubling. Think about maybe modern day religious professors at universities. Michelle and I, my wife and I, we served at a church in Ohio where Miami University is before we were here. And I would often have these conversations with college students who were Christians, and they were like, I'm gonna take a religion class at Miami University. I wanna learn more about the Bible and God. And they'd have like 2 classes, and they'd be like, can I get a meeting with you? Because I don't know what's going on. My faith is being attacked. My professor is telling me why all of these things aren't true, why all of these stories are made up, why the supernatural things couldn't exist, why Paul didn't write this, and these things aren't true. Now, most religion professors in our universities today, they know probably more than you do about the Bible, and they don't believe any of it. None of it at all, right? And then get this one. In James chapter 2 and verse 19, James says this, you believe that there is one God, good. It's good that you know that there is a God and that God exists. That's really good. But then he says this, the demons also believe and they shudder. Demons believe in God? Demons believe that God exists? Yes, they do. Demons know that God exists, which means that there has to be a kind of belief, like a knowledge-only belief, that isn't genuine belief. And so genuine belief is based on knowledge, but get this, knowledge can actually be a real problem. Knowledge alone puts you on par with demons, which maybe isn't a great place to be, right? It puts you where the Pharisees are at. And it can actually lead to a lot of pride and arrogance about what you know, that you know the truths, that you know things about God, but it can actually keep you from genuine faith if it stops at knowledge. If it's just about memorizing Bible verses or religious ritual or knowing stuff about God. So we gotta have something that's more than this. We need knowledge, we have to have knowledge, but it's gotta be more than knowledge. We need the second element, which is assent. Assent. So not just knowledge, but this sense of you and I saying, yes, I believe that. I know about those things, and I believe that Jesus died and resurrected, that he did all of those things. To assent means to agree. It means to accept. I like this one. It means to concur. Concur. Like, I don't know that people use that in normal language anymore, but maybe you're in a business meeting and somebody's like, I concur with Phil on that point. I think we should do that plan. And you're like, who uses the word concur today? But that's cool, okay. But that's actually what it does mean. It means to concur, to agree, to consent. It's where you say, yes, I believe that. Jesus is the Son of God. He died and he resurrected and he is the Savior of the world. So this is where those facts, the knowledge begins to move from your head and get closer to your heart, right? It starts to move down into your heart. It might be where maybe a young person that was raised in the church, or maybe even went through confirmation classes or kids ministry or student ministry, begins to say for themselves, you know what? I don't think this is just my parents' faith. I think this is my faith too. I think that's legit. I think that is true. I think those things are right, and I want to own this faith on my own for me. Or maybe you're an adult and you weren't raised in church, or a young adult, and you've been coming and you had some questions and some skepticism, but you hear the truth about Jesus and you're like, yeah, I think I resonate with that. I think that that is true. You know, this happened to many people in Jesus' day. In fact, when Jesus met with that woman at the well that nobody else wanted to have anything to do with, and he shares that he can give her living water, that he is the Messiah, and she comes to believe in him, she runs back into her town and she tells the people, come see a man that told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? She gives a testimony about Jesus, right? And then all of this town comes out to see Jesus, and they hear and they get the facts about Jesus for themselves. And then notice their response. Listen to this in John 4:42. They say at the end of the story to the woman, they say to her, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we've heard it for ourselves. And we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. This is that process going on, right? They know Jesus, they've seen him for themselves, they heard him, and now they're like, yes, we assent to this. We believe that this is true. Knowledge is necessary. Assent is necessary, moving into your heart. But just like knowledge, get this, assent is not enough. It's not genuine belief yet. Look at John chapter 2 and verse 23, where it describes Jesus' ministry. It says, now while Jesus was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs that he was performing, and get this, they believed in his name. They saw what he did, they believed in his name, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them. For he knew all people. He didn't need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. That's interesting. This is the second level of belief. This is assent belief. People see miracles from Jesus. They hear some of his teaching. They seem to be on board with him. It's more than just knowledge about Jesus, right? Because they're agreeing with him. John says he uses the word belief. They're believing in him. But that belief is not complete yet. And how do we know? How do we know the belief isn't genuine? Well, first, John says that Jesus didn't entrust himself to them because he knew what was in their hearts. Jesus knew that something was missing in them. And we find out later how true that would be in John chapter 6. In John chapter 6, after Jesus feeds the 5,000 people, plus women and children, so maybe there was 10, 15, 20,000 people that were there, and he says to the people, I am the bread of life, I satisfy you. He goes on to say something even more challenging because the people weren't getting it. He says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. And people are like, what? Now, we know Jesus wasn't being literal because he never took a chunk off of his flesh and said, here, in my presence, eat this. He's being figurative. He's trying to get the point across that this isn't just about your physical satisfaction. I'm not just a walking cafeteria for everybody, like I care about your physical needs, but I care about your spiritual needs most deeply, and you've got to be fully invested in me, fully committed to me is what Jesus is saying, all right? This is what he says. And after he presses this point about people being satisfied in him, the people can't handle it. So we read this in John 6 and verse 66. John 6:66, a little ominous. From this time, many of his disciples turned back and they no longer followed him. Same people that are like, we believe in you, we're following you, we're in with you, Jesus, we know who you are, and yes, it's moved to our heart, yes, we're there. They turn back and they say, no, we're out. See, Jesus knew that for many people, belief wasn't genuine. It was more than knowledge. They had some heart in it. They followed him for a while. They were on the right path, but they're still missing something. And you get a clue as to what this was in John chapter 2 when it says that Jesus did not entrust himself to them. Jesus did not trust them because he knew they did not truly trust him. This is the third element of genuine belief. It is trust. Knowledge, knowing about Jesus, knowing truth about him, assenting and saying, yes, I do believe this. And then the third level, perhaps most important, is trust. It is trusting Jesus with everything, being all in, giving him ownership of your entire life and looking to him for everything. It's described in a lot of ways throughout John's gospel, but one of them comes in John chapter 6, right after it says that many of his disciples turned back and they no longer followed him anymore. Check out what it says there in John 6 and verse 67. We read this. It says, you do not want to leave me too, do you? Jesus asked the 12, his 12 closest followers. Simon Peter, who normally spoke for the group, answered and said, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And we have come to believe and to know that you're the Holy One of God. Peter says, Jesus, where else are we going to go? We've sold out for you. We've committed everything to you. There's nowhere else to go. You're the one who is and has eternal life, and so we're committed to you. We are with you. Did you notice that in this verse, Peter gives us all three elements of genuine belief? He says, we know the facts. We know the truth that you're the Son of God. And we believe it. It's in our hearts. We assent to that truth. And then he says this, to whom shall we go? We're committed to you. We trust you fully, and we are sold out to following you. Now, of course, his disciples didn't have it all figured out, right? I mean, they would struggle at times. Peter, after all, was going to deny Jesus 3 times in his moment of greatest need. So genuine belief in Jesus doesn't mean that you never fail again, that you have no questions, that you have no doubts, that you're fully committed every second of every day. But it does mean that you have committed your life to Jesus. That you've said, Jesus, you're my life, you're my authority, you're my hope, you're my Savior, you're my satisfaction, and that comes out in the way that you live. See, knowledge and assent is good. They're good, and they're necessary. But let's talk about assent for a second. I mean, assent alone, even if you get to this level, assent can be pretty passive. I mean, you can hedge with that. You can kind of pull back from that like many of Jesus' followers did. It can stall out. You could just be kind of in or part way in. It could be maybe a little bit like this. I don't know if you've ever been talking to somebody, and let's say you're talking about music, and different music artists come up, right? And so you're talking about, I don't know, U2, Luke Bryan, Beyonce, like choose an artist, okay? So you're talking about this person, and your friend is like, oh, I love Beyonce. Beyonce's like one of my favorite artists. Oh, she's just great. I love it. And you're like, oh, really? You love Beyonce? Like, what's your favorite album? And it's like a long pause. And the person's like, oh, all of them. All of them. I love all of Beyonce's music. I love like everything that she's done has like been so great for a long time. You're like, oh, really? Okay, so like what's your favorite just song from Beyonce? Like, pause, you know. Every song she's ever done is like the greatest songs ever. I love Beyonce. Now, if you know this person, you're probably gonna let him off the hook. But if they're like your sibling or somebody that you're close to, you're probably gonna call him out. And you're gonna be like, bro, you don't even know one song by this artist. You can't say that you love this artist when you don't know any song they have ever done. Now think about this. That person may know who Beyonce is. They may kind of like Beyonce and enjoy her music, but they're not a real fan. Nobody would say that you're a real fan if you can't even name one of her songs. And sometimes belief can be like this. You admire Jesus. You think he's a pretty good guy. You think his teaching is pretty good. You go to church. You kind of give him a little bit of due. You know, sometimes you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. I like him. I go to church. I'm into this a little bit. But do you trust him with everything? Are you more than a fan? Are you willing to make that choice and that commitment to Jesus Christ with everything you are? Is he your good shepherd? Is he your light? Is he the way, the truth, and the life to you? Do you worship him as the greatest and look to him for everything? See, this is where Jesus moves from your head to your heart, to your actions, into your commitments, to how you live and what you do. He is more than just a part of your life. He is your life. Charles Spurgeon, who was a great British preacher, helps us with this by giving us an illustration of what genuine belief, he calls it faith, but genuine faith, genuine belief looks like when he says this. Suppose there is a fire on the 3rd floor of a house and a child is trapped in a room there. A huge strong man stands on the ground beneath the window where the child's face appears and he calls, jump, drop into my arms. So you got the picture? Be the child. Put yourself in that burning building. Feel the desperation of your situation. And then Spurgeon goes on to say this. It is a part of faith to know that the man is there. Still another part of faith is to believe him to be a strong man. But the essence of faith lies in trusting him fully and dropping into his arms. Do you see the 3 elements of genuine belief there? You know, it's one thing to know that the man is there. It's another thing for you to stand on the edge in the windowsill, maybe there, and to say, I know that if I was gonna jump, you would catch me. I know for sure you would do it. I see you, I see that you're strong. I believe that you will catch me. But you will not be saved, and you will not be safe until you drop into his arms. Show that you trust him fully. Look, friends, this is genuine belief. It is to know, it is to say, yes, I believe, and it is to fully trust and give everything to Jesus. Now, Spurgeon's illustration here is so helpful for us, but it also conjures up images of dark times and difficult times, right? We begin to think about maybe belief or faith in this context in terms of like trial and trouble and difficulty. I mean, after all, there's a child trapped in a burning building. The building is on fire and you've got to jump. And there are a number of times and moments and maybe seasons in your life where it is like that. You are suffering through loss and difficulty, and it feels like you're in a burning building and you don't know what to do. I told you that the last couple of weeks in the life of just so many people in our church has been like this. And it's been a season of great loss and difficulty. And there are times in your life where you've been there, and there are times coming where you will be there again. But there's also something else that we need to consider here. It's that much of our life is not like we're in a burning building, right? And so what does trusting Jesus look like in those moments? You know what trusting Jesus looks like? It looks like going to him on the daily. It looks like going to Jesus and saying, Jesus, you help me determine what is true, what is valuable, what is right. It means looking to him for satisfaction. It means yielding your finances to him. It means saying, Jesus, help me to be able to open your word and read and learn about you and grow more in my relationship with you. Help me to learn how to pray. Help me to get in a relationship with other followers of you where I'm accountable to them, where we do life together, where we love each other as we seek to walk with you. It's where you look to him instead of just being distracted on your phone all the time and letting him have your downtime, your job, your family, and your everything. You know, that's not a sacrifice to do that. Sometimes we think, oh man, it would just be, Jesus just asked for so much and it would be a sacrifice if I do that. It's not really a sacrifice. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to be hard. It's not going to be difficult. I'm not saying at all that it's easy to do that. But you know why it's not a sacrifice? It's not a sacrifice because the one who created your life came down, took on human flesh and says, I created life. I know how to live it to the full. I know what it's supposed to look like. I have come to give you life and give it to you to the full. That's why it's not a sacrifice, because he knows what is best for us, and he wants that for you. He wants to walk with you in everything you go to. He wants to shape and determine everything about your life. And you yielding to him, walking with him, is what genuine belief looks like. You know who he is. You say, yes, I believe that is true, and you trust him with everything you are and everything you have.